Hey amigos, you're listening to the Cast&Blast podcast. I'm your host, Pinche Ben.
And I'm your co-host, Jimmy Trent.
Join us and entertaining guests as we share some wins, some fails, and a whole lot of laughs as we dare to admit embarrassing mistakes we've made learning how to fish and hunt. We're glad you're joining us.
And no matter what your background or your skill level, everyone is welcome here.
What's up? What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Cast&Blast podcast. Joining us again is Game Warden Chris Sanchez from Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. He serves Bell County. And in our last episode, we learned a little bit exactly how the Game Wardens serve people of Texas. We learned a little bit about their jurisdiction. And we kind of dipped our toes into water safety. It's that time of year, guys. You're going to be getting out there on the water, floating the river, taking the boat out, jet skis, kayaks, whatever. Let's get a little bit into the boater education training and some of the stuff that are required for Texas boat owners. So let's dive right in.
I've been on the water and I'm learning stuff right now. You know, as a bass angler, you know, I get out there and I'm hitting spots, right? So, you know, booking from spot to spot, and I'm trying to get out there and you know, we stop, but we don't necessarily drop anchor.
Okay.
Right? So I stop, I completely shut the boat down. I'm boats off, kill switch, everything. I'm walking up to the front, I'm dropping trolling motor, and I'm just trying to maintain position.
Yeah.
At that point, typically I take my life vest off.
Okay.
Am I in violation at that point?
You are not, because guess what? You were safe coming across the water because you wore your life jacket.
Right.
You were also safe because I heard you specifically say when you got to that spot where you wanted to fish next, you took your jacket off, and that in turn took your kill switch off, right?
Right.
Because both of those are very, very important safety aspects.
Right.
The law says you have to have that kill switch, that engine cutoff switch. I try not to say the other way.
Right.
The engine cutoff switch, because it saves lives. The reason that law went into effect is to save lives. But just because you are now dropping your trolling motor and you're not wearing your life jacket, you're not under the age of 13, so you're not in violations. And guess what? Your life jacket is still readily accessible because now you just left that in your
Seat. Yeah.
that you're going to operate that boat.
Right.
So when you go to operate it again, you'll don it back on.
Correct.
And everything will be affixed, because I'm assuming, based on this conversation now, that your engine cutoff switch is connected to your PFD.
100%.
And that's a good place for it to be.
Right.
You know another time I like to wear my life vest?
I'm guessing.
What?
You want me to guess?
Yeah.
The other time you like it? When you're floating in the tub.
Nah. When I pee off the boat.
Oh yeah. Hey, you know what? You just brought up a great safety tip, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because anytime we are, and you know, I'm big on PFDs. Kayak fish a lot, and I tell everybody, do not take it off. Get yourself a comfortable PFD and keep it on all the time. Make sure you don't have if you're okay with an auto or a manual, I got it, but that's not going to save your life if you take a spill and you hit your head and you're not capable of actually manually deploying that. So I tell everybody, the kayak anglers especially, I'm very passionate about it because it happens a lot out here. Belton, Stillhouse, you know, we lose
Too many times.
We lose a lot. So, but you just brought up a great safety tip, and that is when is it too much to wear the PFD, right?
Man, the thing is, like, I've never fell out of the boat. I've almost fell out of the boat a lot of times. The majority of that is when I was taking a leak.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure there's plenty of you out there that have done the same, either fell out or almost. When you know,
yeah,
you're on the water, you gotta go.
Right.
So just, throw it on real quick.
That's a great tip, man. And you know, and that could save someone's life. It could save someone from being that guy. You know, you don't want to be, you don't even want to, you know, take a spill, take a dump. But, you know, if it's a potential that it could happen, it's best to be safe. So
knock it out. It's not hard.
Good point. You know, when we talk about PFDs, you know, I I also add this tip to kayak anglers, and this is just something that's not regulated or anything, but out here before we launch, we try to make sure we check in with a buddy, let them know where you're going. Also, if there's a way you can identify your kayak, what I mean by that is some kind of data plate. Put your information on that kayak. If God forbid you had to take a spill and that kayak ends up on shore or the bank somewhere, and there's still, if I saw a kayak, I'll walk up to a kayak and I just see it there and I see some poles by it, I'm looking for an angler who's taking the bank. You know what I mean? But if I see a kayak that's rushed up and there ain't nothing with it and
just floating on shore, banging
up against the rocks, and there's a data plate, I'm going to call the authorities and I'm going to let them know, hey, I just encountered a kayak. There's nobody out here swimming. Can we look for this person? There's a data plate on here that has their information. I think that's a big deal for kayak anglers out here, and it's something that I will share on this podcast so that you guys can maybe do as a practice. And again, check in with a buddy, let them know where you're going to launch from, where you're going to recover, give them a game plan. We talk about apps and stuff that let people know where you're at. Those are just part of water safety. They're not part of necessarily regulated, but it's a tip that can add to. There's not enough. We say everybody's a safety. One of our Army trainings, like everybody can be a safety. You guys keep that in mind as well as you're on the water. See somebody doing an unsafe act. There's nothing wrong with politely going up to them and be like, hey, and you can share a story with them, share an idea with them or something that tells them, yeah, you're right. Let me do it. But
truth be told, that would I'm sure that would take a lot off their plate, right? You guys are spread about as thin as probably any law enforcement is ever. So just, doing the right thing, being safe and not being a knucklehead would, you're always going to have that job security because you're not going to get rid of them all. But I would think that, things like that would take a lot off your guys' plate.
I'll tell you what it's going to do. Yes, I'm 100% in agreement with both of you. It is not only a very, very good idea, but what it would actually do, and this is for, and I can show you both sides, but for your kayaker, if in fact they had a data plate, even if it was as simple as what is required for your fishing gear, right? Gear tag.
Sure.
Not every angler is going to have a gear tag because not every angler leaves their equipment unattended, like right. Some. But if you put that information on your plate, what it's going to do for us is it's going to expedite a final result for whatever have happened.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So if we have a kayak out there, that is identifiable by name, phone number, etc., we can get a hold of that in real time. If we're looking for the kayaker that belongs to it, we may not get a direct answer because if in fact there is an emergency, he is or she is not going to be able to answer it.
Yeah.
But we have a number. We can start tracking down the potential addressee, or the address may be a significant other or a loved one, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to expeditiously allow us to make decisions to what's going to happen. And I'm going to flip that around just because it's a good transition. I spent 5 hours one day on a boat that was abandoned or unoccupied on the lake. Wow. Because the registration on that boat, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the registration on that boat was outdated. So the registered owner on file wasn't 100% accurate. And so it took many hours. Well, it took me 5 hours to get start to finish. Mm-hmm. But so that's a very important thing. That's why that's one of the reasons why ownership information is required out there.
So it should have been a 2 or 3 minute long thing, 5 hours later?
Based on the nature of that call, it should have been less than an hour.
Yeah.
And it turned into be a 5 hour ordeal. And had it been worse, the circumstances, it was a happy ending.
Great.
But had it been worse, let's put it this way. We were fixed during that 5 hours, about 4 hours into it, we were fixing to call in a whole bunch of other resources because we were believing that we possibly had a victim underwater someplace.
That's
someplace.
Yeah.
And that's just terrifying, for everyone involved. You guys, I know you take your job very serious when at all times, but when you got that kind of a call, heightened senses, everybody's on alert, and you're trying to expedite, like you said, the result, right? So I kind of think that that's a good segue to we were talking about kayaks. We really haven't got into like boats and bigger vessels.
Yeah.
But let's talk about boater education and some of the requirements. It is, a lot of people think, you can just go out there right now. I'm going to go buy a boat, and I'm just going to get out there and I'm going to pull it out to the lake and I'm going to go and I'm going to hit the water. I'm going to hit it hard. I'm going to go become a professional bass angler and I'm going to be on the tournament circuit. And before you know it, I'm going to be rich and all that. That's the dream, right?
I'll tell you what, have you watched the videos, the reels, YouTube videos or Facebook videos of people trying to, either launch or recover their boats?
Oh, it's
I'll tell you what, they need
comical.
to watch some of those videos before you go buy a boat if you haven't had one before.
And that's basically, the boater safety aspect and all that stuff. It's not just, it's not like buying a car, man. There's a little bit more requirement behind the responsibility of the boat owner. And can you kind of elaborate like boater education requirements and what somebody, maybe I'm a new boater and I want to get a boat, but before I do it, I want to make sure I'm doing all the right things. Can you kind of walk somebody through maybe some things that can keep them out of trouble?
Absolutely. So the education course is exactly that. It is an educational opportunity. For some, it fulfills a requirement because if in fact you were born on or after September of 93, then you are required to have boater's education by law.
Okay.
So you would be in violation if you didn't meet that criteria. In other words, you were born, let's say in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
Even in 1994, we're still up there in age as far as adulthood, right?
Right.
But by law, if in fact you are in that,
That just made me feel so old.
Yeah, well, don't count.
Here we go.
I think I got you both beat. But regardless, the law says that on that date you have to have boater's education. If you're operating a boat, motorized boat, with a horsepower, a motor with a horsepower greater than 15. Okay, so that's the criteria of requirements for having boater's education. But,
and believe it or not, that narrows down a lot of boats on the lake or boats on the water, because you got a lot of vessels that are out there with some smaller, trolling motors getting around that way. But we're talking about motorized vessels.
Yeah, your typical. Let's just say we'll go up one notch from the kayak. I can't think of a kayak that's going to have any motorized equipment on there that meets that criteria. You jump up to maybe a canoe, still don't think it's going to have that horsepower rating that makes you have it. But as soon as you go up to the next size, a little John boat,
right,
a little deep V, it's real easy to get something along those lines, that 15 horsepower or greater. So depending on what type of boat you have and what size that boat is, you could very well be into that category pretty quick. But that educational course governs a lot more than the rules and regulations. It's all about safety, right? So it's going to talk about navigation, rules of the waterway, right? There's not speed limits out there on the lake as there are on the roadways. On public roadways, depending on the type of road, you may have a defined speed limit, whether it's posted or not. On the water, we don't have radar guns, right?
Right. So you just confirmed that, because I believe you guys are using drones while I'm out there fishing.
Drones aren't radar guns, but we don't use drones for that activity.
Right.
But you use drones.
We have drones, and our drones do lots of different things, including and around water safety,
right?
And specific types of environments for water safety. We would rather provide somebody with a PFD in very, very bad conditions by way of drone than putting a team in the water in a swift water boat and trying to get to them.
Right, right.
So, technology's come a long way, and that's one of the ways that
work smarter, not harder, right?
But that education is going to go and allow individuals to understand what they should be doing out there and what's safe to be doing out there versus, maybe introductory boating courses, whether it's governed by regulation or just learning, right? I've been on forums, not social media forums and platforms, but more of educational type, where, heck, I'm an inland warden.
Mhm.
You get me out there on the coast, I'm gonna be lost. But I try and understand the rules of navigations in a saltwater environment, because I do go out there for personal use,
Right.
not educate or not professional.
I was going to say that I took the boater education course, and I thought it was going to be a breeze, and I was like, man, I know everything there is to know about boating. I took the course, and I was like, oh, I learned something.
And which course did you take? There's about 5 options that I'm aware of.
I don't know.
Did you take it online?
Yeah, it was online.
Did you pay about $50?
I don't remember.
Right. I know that there's one, they vary in price, and I know when I put my kids through them, they actually did the online, the one that cost them, it was animated and everything else.
Yeah.
Had good information, and there's a lot more information on there. But depending on who's teaching your course, whether it be a traditional classroom versus an online, right? There's always going to be something that any student benefits from. And then outside of that education course that may be required for some, getting out there with people that are educated, if you got a novice boater or a novice angler who wants to get on the boat, go out with your buddies that are seasoned.
Right.
Use what works. What about the guy that gets onto one of your boat ramps that you're making reference to? Oops, they forgot the plug. They're not going to find
Don't
that.
you do it.
I hate to say this, but if this goes really, really, really far, I'm going to have a colleague come and give me a whole bunch of stuff, because there was a time where I had my fair share of moments.
Yeah.
One in particular as it pertained to a plug.
Well,
Complacency, it gets us all.
I know that some of the listeners right now are laughing as we speak about this, because I think on our last podcast, or maybe a couple podcasts
Yeah, I think
back,
it was 2 back.
I shared one of my most embarrassing moments of trying to take the wife out, and I forgot the plug, or we referenced it to put it in the wrong hole.
You put the plug in the bilge pump.
Again, sometimes we're distracted, but having a buddy check you on that,
Right.
Hey, even we'll do this professionally. Hey, we're going through a mind check. Did we do this? Did we do this? Did we do this? And we'll ask each other. Yep, now we're good. Did you check the plug? My partner may be backing me up if we're launching from land. As he's backing me up, if I didn't put eyes on it, I'm asking, or I'm looking myself. Hey, did we plug in? So I'm trying to double check as we're getting ready to go in the water. And sometimes good catch. But fortunately, more times than not, we catch it before we get in the water. There have been a couple of times where mistakes were made and we caught it a little bit too late.
Hey, you're human, man.
It happens.
And when we talk about specifically about boater education and the requirements, there's all kinds of water safety information you can access. What are some of the references that you would point somebody into if I wanted to know? I just want to educate myself on water safety. I want to make sure my family is safe. I want to make sure the people around me are having a good time, but I want to be able to answer some questions, or maybe keep the people around me. I want to be the responsible individual of, I'm just that kind of person. I want to make sure everybody's doing the right things. What are some resources I can tap into, like, to know some water safety tips?
Okay. So you've got quite a few options. Depends on how much in depth that you want to go, and we'll leave the education course right out of that equation. But the department has pamphlets. It's called a Water Safety Digest. It's blue in color. If you have a physical copy, it's blue in color. I think it's trifold. Don't get me to count how many times, but I think it's it's a pamphlet. It's pretty thin, and it pretty much summarizes the entire Parks and Wildlife Chapter 31 Water Safety Act.
Great.
It's the digest layman's version. Now, that same information can be found online on our website. So you can go under Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, boating, and then under education, you can find those tips, rules, however you want to call it, do's and don'ts that are on there.
That's great. We'll make sure we drop that link in the description under the video so you guys can reference and have that at your fingertips, because there's just no excuse for you not to get the information if it's that easily available. We want to make sure that was the whole point of bringing the game warden on, is like, let's ask some questions that can kind of get us out of some trouble, get us out of that. There's probably a million circumstances that you have encountered while serving and being on duty on the waterways. We're talking about water safety today. What are some circumstances that can contribute to a boat getting pulled over on the water? Like, as a boater, what can I avoid? Or, what can you say, hey, well, this is kind of like a common cause, and if you guys can, try to lower the risk, and it's going to lower your risk of being pulled over.
So if we see or we observe while we're patrolling the waterways a blatant violation, and of course those violations are all in that Water Safety Act, not the digest.
Right.
And we had talked about earlier in this session, we talked about negligent operation. We also talked about speed limits, right? Even though there's not a speed limit, it doesn't make sense.
Wait, can you say that again? Is there not a speed limit?
That's correct. There is not a speed limit on the lake.
But you have no wake zones.
That is true. But let me just go to you and tell you this. If it's well past dark, regardless of your experience, do you think it would be wise in our current water conditions, knowing that we're really low,
Right.
to be going beyond above plane at well after dark? Let's say 10, 11 o'clock at night. Do you think it would be in anybody's best interest for safety to be going that fast? We're not clocking them at 15, 20, 25, 40, 50 miles an hour, depending on the type of boat. But would that raise a concern for anybody besides us that maybe we should probably see what's going on there?
With this current water level, it's rough out there. I mean, it's a landmine. It's a landfill out there.
Exactly.
I mean,
it's not
crazy.
prudent. It's not prudent to be going as fast as that may be. So that would pique our interest, and we would most likely make a stop, or at least activate our emergency lights to conduct a stop to inquire. Now, were they truly breaking the law? If I can articulate that they were too close to the shore, or they were not avoiding all of the obstacles on there, maybe there's something else going on, which is an indicator, a clue for us, right? But again, they're not breaking a speed, but are they operating that boat in a reckless manner? Absolutely. So the violation is you're being stopped today for operating in a reckless manner. What is the hurry this night when you just luckily avoided, 20 obstacles by the time I was able to catch up to you? Am I going to be able to physically catch up to them in those same conditions? Maybe, maybe not. So those are types of things that we're looking for. We're talking about life jackets. We don't know how old everybody is, but when we see small statured individuals on board vessels that are underway, we may need to verify that they are in compliance. And when we visit with them, everybody has a life jacket, and we will simply ask, and Captain, how old is this young person? And when they answer, now there's a violation, because we're not stopping them. We're just stopping them just to make sure everybody's safe, doing a water safety inspection. But we happen to, at least based on our training and experience, we believe that they may be of age where they're required to be wearing said life jackets. You had made reference to the wake zones, right? Mm-hmm. Or the no wake zones. You would be surprised how often game wardens are called in reference to those wake zone violations. Usually those are surrounding marinas that have lots and lots of money tied up in there, not only of the facility infrastructure, but their clients, their customers with all of their boats that are getting dinged and right. knocked around. So they always want to let us know, hey, we're having a problem with this wake zone issue. We're having boats do this regularly. And so we are aware of it. when we are on the water, we will go by marina areas. And on Lake Belton, we have 3 different areas. On Stillhouse, we have 1. That's just locally, but across the state, we have a whole bunch.
Right.
So we are aware of those types of issues, and we address those types of issues. Those are just the observational type of what's going to get you stopped or what's going to make you stand out as a boater on the water. If you are in the right state of mind, you need to ask yourself, should I be doing this? Is this a safe act? Should I be going down full speed while I have 3 or 4 people with the music playing really loud, jumping around and dancing and carrying on having a good time? Is it illegal? Maybe. Is it smart? Is it safe? Not so much. And that's the reason you're going to most likely get looked at.
Yeah, you guys are not the fun patrol, man. You're not trying to just shut everything down out there, you know? So, I mean, you guys, just in conversation with you, you know, you're a boater as well. You get out there on the lake when you get a chance and you want to have a good time and you want to show your family and your friends or whatever, hey, let's go out to the lake, let's have a good time. So it's not like you guys are just shutting down all activity. There's some things that are going to stand out to you that you're going to say, hey, I'm going to go make sure that they're in compliance, you know, and I'm going to do a little quick inspection for their education and for their safety. If they're doing everything right, and they have all they're in compliance, then I may just have a conversation with them and I'll walk away. And, you know, we see a lot of that on the water, but we also see a lot of people out there that are not in compliance and they're also just, you know, they're giving it away for themselves. You know, if I'm on the boat and I'm fishing and I'm looking, there's a pontoon out there and, you know, there's loud music, there's people jumping off and they're having a good time. There's going to be a couple of red flags I see that I'm like, you know, they better hope that the game warden don't come by, you know, and I've been out on the water several times where, the game warden is patrolling and sure enough, you know, they go by the boat, have a talk with them and there's a long conversation there. And, a lot of times the game warden will, you know, coast off and go away and they're still out there having a good time. So obviously they didn't shut down anything. They didn't do anything. They probably went out there, did an inspection, maybe had a little conversation with some people, you know, maybe the smaller individuals put on a life vest. There's a lot of things that you guys do other than just like, you know, giving out tickets and all that stuff. And that was another thing I wanted to, bring you on here because I've encountered you out in the field several times and you know it's been a pleasant experience for me. And I guess if there's a takeaway from this, and we'll wrap up with the takeaways.
I got a couple questions too.
Yeah.
Do people often argue the fact of? Well, I mean, you hit it. You said like, it's not really breaking a law per se, but the perception of you being reckless can be breaking the law. So do people try to argue that fact and say, I wasn't breaking a law, game warden?
Well, there is a law for reckless operation.
Right, but ignorance to them,
correct.
They don't think it's...
Yeah. Usually when they want to argue, and yes, people like to argue, those folks that are disgruntled because it has already been made clear the enforcement decision was made, you know, it was not only determined, but the recipient, the violator, has been told today you will be receiving the citation for this particular offense. At that point, sometimes they do like to argue. The time to argue is not whether you're right or wrong.
Just kind of nip it in the bud and say
the time is not to, if you are more than welcome to contest this in a court of law. When you contact, I'll explain the citation here when we're done. You will have a choice to make to contact that court and explain to them your side. And then if you want to argue, that's where we will do the arguing. We will not argue on the side of the road, side of the water, boat to boat, etc. Usually we can have that conversation civilly, usually. When it turns into a not so civil, then chances are there's other things going on and they're no longer free to go and we're not going to be citing and releasing.
Right. I've been on that side of it with, I'm not going to say I was a jackass a game warden. But there was an argument that kind of ensued, and we were in court. It ended up in court, and luckily for me, I won that bout. But it was just due to, it was more of a miscommunication type thing, is what it ended up being. But we did have, like Ben said in the beginning of this, we had some questions come in from some folks. So cops, right? Police officers, things like that. They normally, like on a stakeout or, their downtime or whatever, they tend to eat donuts. That's the perception. What do game wardens eat?
That's a very good perception. I will say that there has been many a times where I've had a donut or two. Sometimes I go out of my way to kind of fun at that.
I was hoping you guys had kolaches.
From the same place.
Oh, yeah.
Donuts and kolaches.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I had for breakfast. But
I was kind of hoping you had tacos.
So you must not be privy to, I'm glad you said tacos and not something else.
Yeah.
Game wardens, I'll tell you this in all seriousness. I mean, we're going to eat when we can. Any officer is going to eat when they can. Sometimes we learn the hard way, kind of like when you go on, let's just say we don't have shifts, but let's say that you've been on the clock for a good 8 hours and you haven't had anything to eat yet.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily uncommon for us. I try and make sure I have something before I leave the house. It doesn't happen all the time, but I also try to have something in the vehicle.
Yeah.
Something what we would consider an emergency ration. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's very abundant, and sometimes it's slim pickings. The closer you are as a game warden in a metropolitan area like we are here in Bell County, those options ease up a little bit. We can, we don't necessarily always have to pack a lunch.
Yeah.
It's cost effective to pack a lunch.
Right.
Especially this day and age, but sometimes we just don't have that. But when you're out in rural West Texas, we get a little bit creative. And, I can't think of a game warden who doesn't have a cooler in the back of their truck. That particular cooler is for the game warden.
Yeah.
Not your fish, not your resource, not your illegal take.
Right.
We try and rectify that pretty quick. In other words, if we take possession of your illegal game, we're trying to find the next person that's going to take it off our hands pretty quick, because we got to keep it in edible condition.
Sure.
So that often goes to what, like homeless or food banks or soup kitchens or something.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
if we have the means and the ability to make it happen like that, we do that. Sometimes if I'm seizing a resource at, let's just say it's 10 o'clock at night, and it's fresh, I might not. Let's say it's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm probably not going to have the means to one of those types of organizations.
Yes.
And I need to, I'm not necessarily going to take it home, clean it, put it on ice for that. I'm going to look for the next person who knows how to clean that resource, if in fact it's not cleaned already, that vows to maintain, food for their families, etc. So yes, 9 times out of 10, we're trying to get to a needy family. I usually have a log that I carry with me. And the criteria for my donation is if I call you and you don't answer or you can't receive it, you get struck right off that log.
Yeah, next person.
Yeah.
And then you don't get added back. So that's kind of one way I do it. But we have entities. I remember when I was working outside of Bell County, rather than people fighting over it, one of the things that I was doing was, the zoo animals have to eat too.
Oh yeah.
And so it's a good, healthy diet. And I had a great, I had a phone call where, hey, I'm 20 minutes away. Can you have somebody meet me? And I would donate to that facility. So yeah, as long as our goal is to not let them go to waste and find somebody who can use that resource.
Feed the penguins.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And truth be told, like when Warden Sanchez got here and showed up, we said, hey, how's your day going? It's been a long day for you. He said, man, I haven't had breakfast or lunch yet. So we got to respect the fact that, hey, you're getting ready to go home and at least eat your first meal dinner of the day.
That's my goal.
Yeah, so I mean, if we could sum this up with some takeaways, one of the things that stands out to the top of my head is when we're talking water safety is PFDs. By the way, I have some PFDs that I'm gonna send back with you because I know you guys, when you encounter people without them on the water, it's good to have one to toss them out. So I have a few that I have collected, and I want to make sure that you have those, and you can take them with you, or you might find somebody you might want to donate those to or whatever. But don't be caught on the water without it. If you're a boater and you're new, you fall in that criteria that you are required to have the boater's education. Make sure you don't cheat yourself. And I say that because you're cheating yourself of some good information. At the very least, you're going to learn something, and you're going to keep those on your boat safe. You're going to make sure you're in compliance, and it's going to keep you out of trouble. Another takeaway from this is simple. If you're doing the right thing, chances are you're going to enjoy your time on the water without an unpleasant encounter with the game warden. Now, are there individuals that, could be harder to work with than others? I'm sure. Are there individuals that are, just not as friendly as others? I'm sure. But just talking to the game warden today, I have realized that, their job is quite difficult because they have a large spectrum of responsibility. They're typically stretched kind of thin across a county like ours. And if you can do anything to, shorten that or expedite that inspection, if you can do all those things. I know I've been on the boat and they come out and they check it out, and I have everything kind of laid out, and it just gets them on their way. Hey, thank you. Enjoy your time. Hey, if you caught anything, yeah, this and that. I've even gotten pointers from the game warden about, hey, they were hitting over here or this and that. It's typically a good experience. And I want to encourage you guys to not think of, green pants coming this way. Hey man, it's not always a bad experience, and that was the biggest thing we wanted to do by bringing the game warden on with us, is to kind of bridge that gap. We got to learn how to, respect that authority and understand there's another perspective other than just yours. Understand what they're looking for, understand the job that they have to do. And it'll probably make your day out in the field or in the water a lot more pleasant, and it'll probably change your perspective of, Texas Parks and Wildlife, what they do. It's not, like I said, the fun patrol, and they're just trying to shut everything down,
And we said it a million times to understand that it's your job to educate yourself, not their job to educate you.
That's right.
And your answers say, well, I didn't know, I'm sorry, and think that it's okay. You have to educate yourself on it.
Yeah, because that's not a good excuse. Sorry, I didn't know. And quite frankly, that's not the time to be asking the game warden. There was a million other opportunities you had to reach out to them. They're all accessible. If you look them up, you can get to them. They probably have their service phone number available online. That's how we've gotten in touch with Officer Sanchez here. You got to do your diligence as a sportsman. And I use that term because that's what we want to encourage. We are conservation minded. We are sportsmen. We enjoy the outdoors. We enjoy fishing. We enjoy hunting. And we understand everything that goes along with that. The license, where that money goes to in conservation, where it goes to with giving us access to these public waterways and hunting land. It's a privilege. It can be taken away if you're doing the wrong thing. So, it's best to pay for it, understand where that money's going, appreciate it, and take care of, your natural resources, because that's a limited supply, is it not? So, Jimmy, wrap us up, man, and go ahead and say your prayer and all that. No, I'm just kidding.
Man, you said it, and you've said it before. It's a privilege and it's an investment. Protect your investment, right? That's your investment. Do the right thing and protect it.
There you go. Well, guys, I'm going to wrap this up, man. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We're going to try to bring Game Warden Sanchez out here with us again, man. We really enjoy conversation with him, as well as the educational benefit we have from having him sit down with us. And we encourage you guys to drop your questions. We're going to bring them back, and we're going to have some other opportunities for you to get those questions, those rumors, those maybe arguments or, whatever you have, let's put them in the comments so we can ask them next time, and maybe it'll keep you out of trouble. Maybe it'll answer that gray area you were wanting to know. I guarantee you this, there's no gray area. It's either right or it's wrong. It could be debated in court, I'm sure. However, at that particular instance, you're going to want to be on the right side of that. So, man, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We're going to be bringing Game Warden Sanchez back with us. I hope you enjoyed your time with us. We weren't too hard on you. We asked one curveball, I think, which was
just one. But we do really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining us.
Anytime.
Thank you guys for joining us. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Cast and Blast podcast. Hey amigos, if you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to subscribe so you can be notified when we post new content.
And if you feel like leaving a comment, please do so for this podcast and share with your friends.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you had as much fun as we did.
Now get out there and enjoy the Cast and Blast lifestyle.